All right, guys, here's your assignment for today. We're going to graph or just write the equations of these, okay? This time we've done the horizontal, oh, I'm sorry, we've done the vertical shift, we've done the amplitude. We're going to include the reflections on this one, okay? So this is your assignment in Delta Math. All right, so just practicing, it's going to have the midline, amplitude, and reflections, okay? So 4.5a, sine, cosine, amp, midline, reflections is the name of the assignment. All right, so very similar to the other one. All right, so the first thing I'm going to start off with is, so I'm looking for the dotted line here, right? So the first thing I'm going to start off with is the midline. So what's the midline? So I'm finding my top here, finding my bottom here, right? This is the max. Here's my min. And that means I'm at 5, I'm at 3. So in the middle here is my midline. So my midline is at 4, right? So y equals 4. So that means that 4 goes in here. Okay, from my midline, how high am I going? Okay, I'm going 1 unit up, so my amp is just 1. I'm going one up, one up, and one down, right? Okay, and then the other question here is, well, I know this is a sine curve because it says sine curve, but the sine curve always starts on the midline, right? So sine starts on the midline. Now, the direction it goes is going to tell me whether my amplitude is going to be positive or negative. So right now my amplitude is 1. But if you notice here, let me just erase a little bit of this. So if you notice this, the sine curve starts by going down. And because it's going down, it means you have a reflection over the x-axis. Okay, so the amplitude is not just 1, but now the amplitude is going to be -1. Sorry, that's a little messy. All right, so that's all this is here. My period is going to be 1 for these, so we haven't played with the period yet. And again, you could tell the period is going to be 1 because if you notice, it completes one sine curve. Right, so from start to finish, it's at the same height, right? From start to finish, it finishes one sine curve in 2 pi radians. So my amplitude is just 1. All right, and again, we're not going to mess with that yet. Right now, all we're just messing with is my amplitude, my midline, or your vertical stretch, and now deciding whether the amplitude is going to be positive or negative based on the direction of your sine curve, and we'll see cosine in 1 second. All right, so here's another sine curve, okay? So I'm finding my max, I'm finding my min. All right, so here's my max, here's the mid. That means my midline is going to be in the middle, and my midline here is just -2. So y equals -2, so -2 goes in here. All right, and then again, my graph is starting on the midline, so that's what tells me that it's going to be a sine curve and not a cosine curve. All right, so the sine curve always starts on the midline. It completes one full cycle, one full period at 2 pi. So x is just 1, so that, like I said, we're not going to mess with the period just yet. The amplitude, so my amplitude, so the graph is starting by going down, so it's going to have a reflection over the y-axis, so it's going to be negative. And then just how far is the amplitude from how far is your max and min from the midline? So it's only 1 unit above, 1 unit below, so your amplitude is just 1. So again, in this case, this is just y equals -1 sine 1x plus -2, or just -2. Let's see a cosine curve now. All right, so here's the cosine curve. Okay, so I'm going to find my max. I'm going to find my min. Okay, and then I'm going to find the middle here. And my middle is here. It's my midline. And the midline is right at 0, so y equals 0 is my midline. So that's just going to be 0, right? It's not going up and down. There's no vertical shift up or down. And then I'm going to find out how far is my max from my midline. It's 5 units. So my amplitude is going to be 5. Okay. And then the next thing I'm going to notice here is I don't start on the midline. So here's my midline. I'm starting above the midline. Okay. Anytime you start above or below, then we're using cosine. Okay, so since I'm starting above, if I'm starting above the midline for cosine, my amplitude is going to be a positive 5. Okay. All right, one more. And again, the period is going to be from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, so sine goes from here, cosine goes from here to here, one full rotation, one full period, sine 2 pi, which is why my b value here is 1. But again, we're not going to mess with that yet. All right, let's do one more. Okay, one more here. I'm going to find my max. Okay, so here's my max. Here's my min. And here's my midline. All right, my midline's at 4. So y equals 4. That's my vertical shift up 4 units. Okay, how far is the max from the midline? It's just 1 unit, and the max and min should be the same distance away. So my amplitude is just 1. Now I just got to decide if it's going to be a positive 1 or negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to erase a few things here. Okay, so here's my midline. All right, I'm not starting on the midline, I'm starting below the midline. And because I'm starting below the midline, then it's going to be cosine theta. And because I'm starting below, then it's going to be a negative cosine theta. So my amplitude is going to be negative 1 cosine 1x for now, because again, my period is just 0 to 2 pi. Right, so nothing's changing. My b value is not changing here. So there it is. Okay, so just to refresh, when you start on the midline, we're using a sine function. Starting on the midline and going down, and it's a negative amplitude. Starting, the second option is using not starting on the midline. Okay, either starting above the midline or below the midline. So if you're starting above the midline, it's going to be a positive cosine. If you're starting below the midline, then it's going to be a negative cosine. Right? And that dictates whether your amplitude is going to be positive or negative for the cosine function. All right, hopefully that's helpful. Any questions? I'll see you guys in the next one. See you guys in the next class.